The road was empty, just Belle, the hum of her engine, and the long, dark stretch of Highway 95. It had been a long day. A stakeout in D.C., hours of tension, surveillance reports, and silence. She was heading home. But as the city lights disappeared in her rear view, a different kind of silence crept in. The kind that makes your heart listen harder. Then it happened. Red and blue lights pierced the night behind her, dancing violently through her rearview mirror. No sirens, just light. And in that moment, Belle Monroe wasn't Special Agent Belle Monroe anymore. She was just a black woman, alone, on a deserted road. Her hands tightened around the steering wheel, not from guilt, from memory. Her father's voice echoed in her mind like it always did. If you ever get pulled over, baby, hands on the wheel, no sudden moves, and speak slow. She had been trained in firearms, federal protocol, tactical negotiation. But nothing in Quantico prepared her for this kind of danger. She rolled down the window, slowly, deliberately. The officer approached with heavy steps, boots grinding gravel, shadow long and looming. His hand was already on his weapon. Why? Belle knew better than to ask. He leaned in. "License and registration," he said, voice sharp, breath visible in the cold. She kept her voice calm, her words rehearsed, her identity clear. "I'm Special Agent Monroe, FBI. I have my credentials in my bag. May I reach for them?" He didn't respond. His eyes moved, but not to her badge, not to her ID, just to her skin. She could feel it, the shift. This was no longer a traffic stop. It was a judgment, a decision, and it wasn't based on protocol. It was based on perception. Her badge didn't matter. Her rank didn't matter. In that moment, only the color of her skin seemed to matter. And in that chilling silence where identity and authority dissolved into fear, Belle whispered a truth too many know. Even when you wear the badge, you can still fit the description. The moment she stepped out of the car, the temperature dropped, not in the air, but in the space between two people, one with a badge and a gun, the other with a badge and brown skin. Belle stood tall, not because she felt safe, but because she refused to shrink. Officer Riker's stance shifted, feet apart, hand on the holster. His eyes scanned her from head to toe, not looking for weapons, looking for weakness. "Keep your hands where I can see them." His voice was louder now, sharper, not for clarity, but control. Belle kept her voice calm, as steady as she could. "Sir, I've identified myself. I'm a federal agent." "Quiet," he barked. The command wasn't about noise. It was about who was allowed to speak. In that moment, she wasn't an agent, not in his eyes. She was just another silhouette in the dark, another black body he had already judged. She thought of the irony. All the times she trained rookies on de-escalation, all the cases she built against dirty cops, all the lectures about using power with restraint. Now here she was, experiencing everything she'd sworn to fight against. Not in theory, not on paper, but in the gut-punch reality of a gun pointed at her chest. Riker stepped closer, gun unholstered now, his breath quick. "Is there a weapon in the vehicle?" "Yes," she replied. "Standard issue Glock, FBI protocol, locked in the console." He didn't blink, didn't move. A long pause, then, slowly, she saw it. The gun, rising, leveling with her head. And in that instant, Belle understood. This wasn't about law. This wasn't about suspicion. This was about ego. A man so consumed by fear and bias that her badge didn't matter, only her skin. She stood still, not because she trusted him, but because she didn't want to give him a reason, not one he could twist in his report. And inside, a single thought kept repeating, "I have to survive this, so I can expose it." Somewhere across the road, behind a row of trees, a light flickered. Not the glow of headlights, not a flashlight, a phone screen, the quiet click of a camera recording. And in that moment, without a word spoken, everything changed. The bystanders' hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of what they were capturing. A black woman, hands raised. A white officer, gun drawn. No aggression, No resistance, only fear, and a silence louder than any scream. The lens didn't judge. It didn't edit. It just recorded. It captured the pause in Belle's breath, the twitch in Riker's fingers, the gap between law and justice. For years, Belle had reviewed evidence like this: shaky cell phone footage, grainy screenshots, the last words of people who didn't survive traffic stops. But she never imagined she'd be the one in frame. And yet, that footage, taken by a stranger, was doing something her badge couldn't: holding someone accountable in real time, without spin, without a report, just truth in pixels and light. Riker hadn't seen the camera yet. He was still too caught up in the performance of control. But Belle did. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught that little red light blinking in the dark, like a heartbeat. And for the first time since the stop began, she felt something unexpected: hope. Because cameras don't save lives, but they can expose lies. And when truth goes viral, the world stops pretending it didn't see. The video was only 96 seconds long, but that's all it took. By morning, it was everywhere. Shared, quoted, stitched, dismantled. News anchors debated it. Influencers reacted to it. Lawyers analyzed it frame by frame. And strangers, millions of them, watched a federal agent nearly die because someone didn't see her as one. The hashtags exploded. Justice for Belle, pulled over while black. Mar power with no accountability. Every platform, every screen, her face was there. Not smiling, not strong, just still, with a gun pointed at her. Some called it unacceptable. Others said it was standard procedure. But Belle didn't care what they called it. She knew what it was: a mirror, not just for her, for a country that had spent too long pretending not to see. Officer Riker was placed on administrative leave. The department said they were reviewing the footage. The mayor promised transparency. But Belle had heard these words before. After Ferguson, after Sandra, after Tamir, after. What made her story different wasn't what happened. It was who it happened to. An agent, a Fed, one of them. And still, that hadn't protected her. Maybe now, someone would finally believe the ones who didn't wear badges. Belle stood in her apartment that night, lights off, screens glowing. Her phone buzzed nonstop: messages, calls, news requests, support, and hate. Her fingers hovered over the power button, but she didn't shut it off. Not this time. Because silence is what they count on. And Belle Monroe wasn't silent anymore. The camera had done its part. Now, it was Belle's turn. No uniform, no apologies. She walked into the FBI Operations Center not as a headline, not as a symbol, but as a leader. The room was quiet when she entered, not out of disrespect, but out of awareness. Everyone had seen the video. No one dared pretend it didn't matter. But no one knew what Belle would do next. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't ask for sympathy. She simply clicked the remote. The screen behind her lit up. Subject: Officer Daniel Riker. "We've got a problem," she said, "and he's not the only one." Silence, then a shift. Pens clicked, eyes locked in. The mission was back on. Belle laid out the timeline. The complaints Riker had received, the cases quietly buried, the patterns of behavior no one wanted to call by name: targeting, profiling, predation. "He didn't just pull a gun on me," she said. "He's pulled that gun, metaphorically or literally, on dozens of people. The difference is, I got a camera. They got silence." Her team wasn't new to cases like this, but this was the first time the subject was one of their own. Not because he worked for the Bureau, but because he had acted with impunity in a system that too often looked the other way. "We're not here to destroy departments," she said. "We're here to rebuild trust." She divided the team. One would reopen Riker's past stops and arrest logs. Another would contact victims who never filed complaints. And Belle? She would face the department's leadership and the politics that came with it. Because this wasn't just about Riker. It was about every Riker who hadn't been caught on camera. That night, as the briefing ended, One young agent lingered behind. "Agent Monroe," he said quietly, "what made you come back?" She paused, looked him in the eye. "Because I'm not just fighting for me," she said. "I'm fighting for everyone who couldn't make it to this room." The room was cold, by design. No windows, one table, two chairs, a mirror on the wall that didn't reflect truth, only power. Riker sat on the far side. No uniform now, no badge. Just a man who finally had to explain what he did when no one was supposed to be watching. When the door opened, he didn't look up. Not at first, but the sound of her heels on tile. That made him glance. And in that second, the blood drained from his face. "Agent Monroe?" He said it like a question. Like maybe if he called her by the right title now, it would erase what he'd done before. Belle sat down slowly. She placed a folder on the table. Thick, worn at the corners. Inside, timestamps. Dash cam footage. Civilian complaints. Notes from victims who had never been believed. "You know what this is?" she asked quietly. Riker nodded, but words caught in his throat. "Let me help," she said. "It's you. Not just from last week, from last year, from 5 years ago. A career built on fear, disguised as routine stops. And now, no shield to hide behind." Riker tried to speak. Something about misunderstanding, about protocol. Bell raised a hand, stopping him with a single gesture. "You pulled a gun on a federal agent," she said. "But more than that, you pulled it like you've done it before. That's what scares me the most. Not that you did it, but that it came so naturally." The room was silent, not because there was nothing left to say, but because everything had already been said. In footage, in patterns, in victims' voices that were finally being heard. Bell stood up, closed the folder. "You'll get your hearing," she said. "Your lawyer. Your due process." She leaned in, voice lower now, almost a whisper. "More than most people you pulled over ever got." And with that, she turned and walked out, leaving behind the silence that Riker had forced on others for far too long. The podium was small, the microphones too many, the questions shouted, chaotic, but Belle Monroe stood still. Not for the cameras, not for the headlines, but for the truth. "Agent Monroe," one reporter called out, "what do you want the public to take away from all this?" Belle paused. Let the silence settle. Let the weight of it land. Then she spoke. "I want people to understand something simple. Authority without accountability is just oppression. A badge is not a license to intimidate. It is a responsibility to protect. And when that responsibility is betrayed, it's not just about policy. It's about people. People like me. People like the ones who never had a camera rolling." Cameras clicked. Reporters scribbled. But Bell didn't flinch. "You ask me what I want? I want a world where someone like me can show a badge and not have to pray it's enough. I want justice to be a system, not a reaction to a viral video." She looked across the crowd, past the journalists, past the agents, toward the people who had written her emails, told her stories, shared their fear, and to anyone out there who's been stopped, silenced, or shamed. Not for what you did, but for who you are. I see you, and you are not alone anymore. She stepped down. No applause, just a heavy, reverent quiet. Because sometimes, the most powerful speech is the one that reminds us. Truth doesn't need to shout, it just needs to be heard. Belle Monroe didn't ask to become a symbol. She just wanted to go home that night. But the world had other plans. Plans to record her, to debate her, to decide what her story meant, before she even had the chance to live it. And yet, she stood, spoke, led, not because she wasn't afraid, but because silence is more dangerous than any weapon ever drawn. Somewhere tonight, another car is pulled over, another hand reaches for a license, another breath is held, another prayer whispered, "Please let this not be the end of me." And somewhere else, a phone begins to record, because now, people are watching. And more importantly, they're no longer looking away. Belle's story didn't change the world overnight, but it cracked something open. A silence, a system, a spell we were all under. And in that crack, there's light. Not enough yet, but maybe just enough to take the next step toward something better. This was Belle Monroe's story, but it never should have needed to be told. The real question is, how many more stories like hers are still waiting in the dark?